Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, based on whichever part of the world you are. We have lined up an amazing session for you with three amazing panelists from three amazing schools of Europe. Before we go into the introduction, let me tell you the cause that we are supporting. So, we are raising funds for COVID situation in India. All of us belong to a platform named Mentoroni, wherein people from or students from top 20 schools of the world have come together and they are donating their time for one-on-one mentorship for topics such as admissions, MBA admissions, MS admissions, GMAT, GRE strategy, resume writing, career counseling, and they're asking for just a little bit of your donation to any NGO or to the fundraiser that we are supporting of any amount that you would like. Now let's get started with our session. Let's first of all ask for the introduction. Harsh, why don't you introduce yourself first?
Definitely. Hello, everyone. So glad all of you are here and joined us on a Saturday afternoon or evening or morning, wherever you're from. My name is Harsh, and I will be attending Cambridge Judge Business School this September 2021. I come from tech consulting and digital transformation background. I specifically work in Industry 4.0, and I have mastery in supply chain management, operations, digitization, and I have total 8 years of experience. And happy to be here.
Perfect. Rishika is going to Oxford CEAD. Rishika, why don't you go next?
Sure, thanks, Nikhil. I'm Rishika from South Africa. I did my undergraduate in economics, statistics, and management, and I'm going to be going to Oxford Said Business School in September 2021, so this year in September. I'm currently working at PwC in the advisory practice. I've been there for 5 years, and I am specializing in customer experience and business transformation. Welcome, everyone.
Perfect. Prabhat, how about you?
So yeah, hello everyone. I'm Prabhat Gupta, and I'll be going to HEC Paris class of 2023. And I've been a supply chain specialist for past 7 years. I started my career with consulting, then went on to open my own startup in agri-tech e-commerce, and currently working with a Google-funded hyperlocal delivery e-commerce. So yeah, with post MBA plans also, I would be looking after the supply chain industry. So yeah, thanks for joining.
Great, great. So let's dive into the whole MBA journey. And I believe the MBA journey starts with a test that's GMAT or GRE, and that's the debate that has been going on from quite some time. So I would like to ask Harsh about any strong opinions that you have on this debate of GRE versus GMAT. Which one would you prefer and why, and stuff like that?
Definitely. Thanks, Nikhil. So I started with GMAT. I studied for a month. I did the mocks. I did very bad. I shifted to GRE because I was hearing it's relatively easy. I studied GRE for a month, and then I realized GRE was kind of very different for me, at least, than it was GMAT. There are similarities, and then there are major differences. So basically, for me, both the tests test your logical understanding. How good are you at the process of elimination, right, and connecting the dots? But GRE tends to be a little less intensive on mathematics, but a lot intensive for me on vocabulary and English command, right? So for my background, understanding and cramming up all those words, all those heavy words, was kind of proving out to be very difficult, right? So I decided to come back to GMAT, and that's where I think I attempted twice the GMAT, right? So even after I did not do well in my real exam, also in the first attempt, I did not move away from the GMAT, and I continued there, because for GRE and GMAT the strategy are a little bit different, right, in terms of test, also how they are adopted, right? So your GMAT is question adapted test, but your GRE is section adapted, right? You have 4 sections, but based on how your performance is in the earlier section, you get the level of the second section, right? 2 maths, 2 English. But in terms of GMAT, I felt that once you start to lose the momentum, you can still gain back up, and that's your next questions will be accordingly. But for me, GRE was inside. If I screw up one section, my entire entire that particular segment, whether it's mathematics or English, is completely screwed. That was my understanding of the test, and that's why I prefer to stick with GMAT.
I see. I see. And Rishika and Prabhat, the question to you: Do you recommend any GMAT resources, any particular resources that you guys followed, and what were the timelines for you for the preparation of GMAT?
Yeah, so I'm happy to take this one. I know there's a lot of GMAT resources out there, and it can be quite overwhelming. So there's Bloomberg, Manhattan, Princeton, Veritas, the GMAT original guide. So I was actually quite confused as to where I should start. So after doing like a lot of research on GMAT Club and quite a few blogs, I started with Manhattan Prep, so both for verbal and the math section. And I went through, I think there were 9 guides. I think they've slimmed it down now. So I went through all 9 guides. I started in May 2020, so May of last year. And I actually built myself a sort of a study timetable just to hold myself accountable to something. So I started with the Manhattan Prep, went through all those guides, and then started doing questions from the original guide, the GMAT original guide, both for verbal and for the math section. And then after that, I did all the test papers from the GMAT, the website. I think there were about six past papers, or 6 papers that they put together. And then I found that I had a bit more time on my hands. So then I did the Manhattan test and the Princeton test, which are fine to do. Some are a bit easier than the original test, and some are a bit harder. But yeah, that was sort of the schedule that I followed. And then I wrote in October of October 2020, and wrote it for the first time, and was lucky enough that I only had to write it once.
Perfect. And how was it for you, Prabhat? What were the resources that you used?
So I typically went through GMAT Club and Poets and Quants just to get a flavor of how the GMAT exam is actually. And typically in terms of timeline, I think if you give your GMAT mock test once, and if you want to enhance your score, let's say with 50 or let's say 60 odd points, then I think 1.5 months are sufficient enough. So that's how I planned my overall GMAT. So I wanted to enhance my score by 100 points. So I gave myself around 2 months. And that's how it is overall I gave 2 attempts. And the first attempt was fully with the exam anxiety on the main day, right? So I just planned for my second test and got the desirable score. So that's how my overall take would be on this, that give your mock first, and then prepare for the exam accordingly, and then again give for the sufficient mocks, official GMAT mocks, and then you can see whether you're able to score those desirable points or not. Thanks.
All right, I see. I also feel GMAT Club is an amazing platform to start or to prepare for your GMAT. They've got everything out there: sample questions, mock tests, and everything that you can think of around the journey of GMAT. So amazing platform to follow to prepare for preparation of GMAT. Also, we have a session happening tomorrow on Mentoroni. People who would want to prepare for GMAT and are looking on how to start, what to do, what should be the strategy. We have a mentor who scored 760 on GMAT, and people can go and register themselves. It's happening tomorrow, 7 p.m. IST. Feel free to go to Mentoroni and register yourself over there. After the test, in the admission journey, there's a point where we have to evaluate on, do we need to go to admission consultants? So I would want to ask you if you guys followed any admission consultant. What are your thoughts on admission consultants, or should we really choose an admission consultant or not? Harsh, would you like to take this one?
Yeah, definitely, Nikhil. So I definitely did went with an admission consultant, and I think I'm in a position to share a couple of points, because I signed up with an admission consultant and then I signed up with another one, right? For me, the most important thing is how well you're connecting with your admissions consultant. You don't need to sign up with them for 5 schools or 10 schools, right? You just need to sign up with maybe for one school, but enough time, and the person or the consultant is able to bring those stories out from you, right? So what I've seen is there are different ways admission consultants work. One, they give you a sheet of predefined formats where it says a question like that should be answered to this, or think about
Yeah.
your post MBA goals. This is how I have from previous years. This person was very successful in scoring getting admitted. So this is what he wrote. And then there are other people who I work later on, that they sat with me for 4 hours, 5 hours during the course period of 1 week, and we just spoke where I come from, what are my experiences, not just professional, but what are my personal experiences. And then they cherry pick the experiences from there, and then they said, okay, this is something we can use in your MBA application or in your admissions process. It was interesting for me, because while working with these people, I also realized there are so many points, there are so many aspects and sides of our life that we totally forget about or don't remember at all. But then again,
Mhm.
when discussions like these happen and somebody sitting with you, showing empathy and very interesting in listening to your story, even though you paid them to do that, but somebody is doing that for you, you kind of come across very colorful, and you realize, okay,
Mm.
there is so much I can use. For me, it was very interesting because I kind of liked it. I also got a slight bit of clarity of why I should be choosing a specific school, or what should be my post MBA goals. What should be, right? What they are, that's a different story. What
Yeah.
should be. So very interesting. Again, choose your consultant very wisely. It can be overwhelming process for anyone starting their journey now, to applying to these all schools, and seeing all those patterns that you have, right? Once first time when you see all these questions, or you're applying to 4 schools, you see the essays, all 4 are different, they look very
Yeah.
different. So you're going to be overwhelmed. So if there is
Yeah.
somebody try to handhold you, give you a schedule of their own, and ready to listen to you, go with them. And you don't need to sign up for 5 schools. If you are just applying to 5 schools, sign up for
Yeah.
2, right? Sign up
Mm.
for 2, bring your stories out, and then cherry pick yourself. One school if you do on your own or with the consultant, I think rest you can do on your own. That's my
Perfect.
my
Yeah.
personal view on that.
Yeah, and that's rightly said. I mean, for me, I never went to any admissions consultant. For me, what worked was I talked to a lot of current students, alumni of my target schools, and they were able to tell me the areas that I should focus on for my target school. So, for instance, going to ESA, somebody told me that, since you're coming from technology background, IESE wants to be good in technology. That's where the right match is. Just focus on that story and bring that out. And that sort of worked for me. So maybe talking to people who are already in that school, if at all you don't want to go to an admissions consultant, maybe talking to people to understand what the school wants and what can you offer to the school can give you a lot of clarity. Perfect. Right after that, the very first question, right before we jump into the discussion of how to prepare for your application, the very first question is, why do we really want to do an MBA, right? And why now at this point in time? Maybe Prabhat, I would like to start with you on this. Can you share your thoughts on why you are doing an MBA right now and at this point in time?
Sure. So again, why MBA can be answered in 3 ways. You have to look at the 3 caveats. One is if you want to change your geography. Second is if you want to change your role. A third is if you want to change your industry, right? So for me, at this moment of time, I was very much sure that I'm not gonna change my industry. Rather, I'm gonna change my role and majorly geography, right? So that's why, I started applying for the MBA and got through it. Overall, in terms of MBA, out of those 3 caveats, you would be able to cover for mainly 2. Like very few people actually go for the changes in role, industry, and geography, all 3, right? So that's why MBA. And what was the second question?
Why at
Why
this point
now?
in time, like why in this point in time in your
Yeah.
life? Yeah.
So again, if you have substantial experience already, and what you actually want to have in your with your post MBA goals, it's a good time to choose your MBA now. Ideally, with your abroad MBA, if you have around of let's say 3 or 4 years of experience, or at least you are applying with, let's say, 3 years of experience because you will be going in the next year, right? So if you're applying with those amount of years, you would be able to contribute to your cohort, because at the end it's all about those new perspective and, like, the exchange of all the ideas and the experiences so far, right? So if you
Yeah.
don't have those like, anecdotes already, it would be hard for you to contribute to your cohort, right? So
Yeah.
why MBA is, again, like, to change your geography, location, or your role. And why now is, like, maybe if you have substantial experience, maybe you working from your 10th class itself, so it doesn't matter, like, you can also apply with those 2 or 3 years of experience as well. Yeah, thanks.
Perfect, perfect. And how about you, Rishika? What are your reasons of choosing doing an MBA now?
Yeah, so mine very similar to Prabhat. Changing sort of location and job function. So I'm hoping to pivot into product management, hopefully, although keeping my eyes open to new opportunities that may come up during the MBA journey when I start in September. And why now, similar to Prabhat as well, is I've worked at PwC for 5 years, and I know now that I've sort of peaked in my role, and I also want to change my role. So I knew that this was the right time, and the MBA was sort of the right stepping stone into getting me to my next role and getting me into the location of my choice.
Perfect, perfect. And since we are talking about the locations, and the USP of this panel is that all of us are going to European schools. So it's a question to all of you: why did you choose Europe over doing an MBA from India or from US? What were your reasons? Maybe Harsh, you can start with that.
Definitely. So, why Europe? For me, two reasons. One, I have spent a significant part of my career here in Europe. I've been here for 7 years, and I worked in France, Italy, UK. Uh, for me, I kind of felt that I have already understood those cultural shocks that you get when you enter into mainland Europe or when you go to UK. That was one reason. And the second for me was I have 8 years of experience, and I was kind of looking at more mature schools. Those are a little bit untraditional, and there you go, voila, Europe. So in Europe, the
Yeah.
average age of your candidates increase, the average experience of your candidates increase, the school or the program period are smaller. In many of the schools, like Cambridge is only 12 months, in essentially 9 months, and 3 months you have an internship. So I was looking for all those, and then when I clubbed all of those things, I wanted to remain in Europe. I like the work culture, the lifestyle here. The work
Yeah.
culture is not very hectic. That's what I have felt. I've never worked beyond 7 or 6:30 p.m. In my whole career of 7 years here. So I kind of got drawn to that lifestyle. I spoke to a lot of friends, a lot of people, a lot of colleagues who work in US, and I realized there is a hustle, yes, but do you want that hustle in your life right now? And my
Yeah.
answer was no, and that's why I decided to stay put in Europe. That was my reason. Those were my
All
reasons.
right.
Yeah.
How about you, Rishika?
So the first thing was sort of choosing between a 1 year or 2 year MBA. So predominantly American schools are 2 years. So I think there's a financial aspect, and there's also a time aspect, and what are you willing to forego? So my decision was pretty straightforward. I wanted to do a 1 year MBA. I couldn't see myself studying for 2 years as much as I really wanted to do an MBA. So 1 year, and so that narrowed it down to Europe for me. And then I guess choosing between the schools, it's just, what are the values of the school, and what do they bring to the table, and how does that align to my values and my passions?
I see. I see. And that totally makes sense. And how about you, Prabhat? Any specific reasons for moving from India to Europe?
So yeah, same thing as Harsh. While I was in KPMG, it was my first job, so I got to work in Italy, France, and UK. And I was very much sure because I have some network already there. Like, generally people don't choose Europe for their job scenario because it's actually tough to get English speaking at least jobs in Europe, right? So since I had prior network and I already worked there, so I always wanted to go to Europe over US again with the same reasons that you want to you don't want to live to work, you work to live,
Yeah.
right? So and that's the
Yeah.
motto of Europe. So that's why choosing Europe was very very easy for me. Now again, HEC Paris was like the number one priority because I always wanted to go for 16 months MBA rather than because one year MBA can be too short. 2 year
Yeah.
MBA just like US is can be too long, right? So that's why like HEC Paris was the number one preference, and again Europe was the number one preference. Thanks.
All right. And also, I mean, this work-life balance thing was definitely a reason for me as well. One other
Yeah,
reason, one other difference that I feel we have in European schools than in US schools is the kind of diversity that we get here. We get people from, like, for instance, at IESE, I guess we have students from around 95 different nationalities. So that's the kind of, and in my current organization as well, I have people from more than 90 countries. So that's the kind of diversity that you get to
yeah,
experience in the European schools, and that was one of the reasons for me to get into a European school.
That's a very good
Now,
point.
like, since we have discussed on the geographic location particularly, now I want to touch upon why your respective schools. Prabhat, I would want to start with you. Why did you choose HEC?
yeah. So again, overall from my side, I applied to only 5 schools, including ISB. So ISB, INSEAD, HSC, Cambridge, and Oxford. I got into ISB, HSC, and Cambridge. HSC was always my number one preference. As I mentioned, one is of the program duration. Secondly, even as compared to INSEAD being a top school, I always preferred HSC over INSEAD because INSEAD had 10 months of program and much larger cohort of 600, 700 folks. Rather, HSC has only 300 folks, right? So that was one. Second thing was around the overall international experience of HSC. Even in my cohort, we have 97% international students. Only 8 to 9 people are from France. So that gives you a certain kind of an edge because everybody is on the same boat and even they would be exploring Europe with the same lens as you would have. So that was these were the reasons HEC Paris was the number one preference. Yeah. Thanks.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And Rishika, how about you? How did you zero down to Oxford?
Yeah, it was actually a tough one because I was looking at, I sort of made a priority list. So social impact was on that priority list, technology, entrepreneurship, sort of things that I can go and grow my ideas, sort of like a business incubator. And Oxford was the one that sort of brought all those things on my priority list together. So Oxford is driving a huge sort of social impact drives, and not just from an entrepreneurship perspective, but also how do we bring corporates and society together? And that's an sort of an aspect that's very close to my heart. And so I knew that not only was the curriculum, going to be focused around corporates and society, but also the cohort was very much going to be on the same wavelength. So I get to learn about social impact and bringing, society and corporates together, also from my network that I create. And one of the other things that really attracted me to Oxford was the Creative Destruction Lab, which is sort of like a business incubator. And they get sort of small startups, or rather small SMEs, to come and pitch their ideas, and they narrow it down to about 40 to 50 businesses. And the MBA cohort can then join one of those startups and help nurture it over a 9-month period. And I thought this was really cool, and where I could also enhance my skills, and it would sort of get me ready for the next role coming out of the MBA.
Perfect. Before we go to Harsh, there's an information for audience that if you have any questions that you would like to ask our panelists, feel free to put in the comments. We'll be picking up all the questions in the end of this particular session. Now we move to Harsh. Harsh, how did you decide on Cambridge?
Okay. So right, as Rishika was saying, I wasn't very clear in the beginning, like Prabhat always was for HEC, right? So I put a lot of research into the place. because I was pretty late on the GMAT game. I applied to Cambridge round 3. So basically, I was deciding meanwhile, which is those one or two schools I really want to focus on. Cambridge, two reasons, or rather three. Number one is the Silicon Fence. So Cambridge, as a Cambridge cluster, the whole town, and there are like 1,200 tech startups that are running, and a lot of health tech startups, right? The stories that you hear, the kind of stories that I heard, that MBA students collaborated with PhD students, and then they combined the research with the business acumen, and then there are $1 million startups now. It kind of attracted me because I was interested into health tech, and I could do a specific, for example, you go to Vanderbilt Owen, US school. You can do a healthcare. They have a very good presence, or you can come to Cambridge, where there are more than 30 or 40 startups on health tech, and on the backyard of Cambridge itself, there are so many startups running by the school alum. So that was one reason for me. Second was the kind of practical knowledge Cambridge has managed to put in. We have GCP, we have also the Cambridge Venture Project, we have Global Consulting Project. So these projects, they are full-length projects where you're working with a particular company to solve the business problem. So these are two consulting projects. One lasts for 3 months, one is for 1 month. So what attracted me, within a 9 months of period or 12 months, you have an internship to do, you have two consulting projects to handle, and those are nice, good, well-renowned companies, right? So how they were trying to put this, whatever you learned in the classes, right? Management Praxis is one of the very famous class. So whatever you're learning in the class, you're putting that into the real world problems right there, right? So that was something that was, again, very interesting for me. And I think the third reason is everywhere for everyone. The diversity, the kind of experience, not only the ethnic diversity, but the experience diversity Cambridge tries to bring. That was very interesting for me, because there are so many people right now. They have done. There are athletes. There are people who are Olympiads. There are people who were playing football at Kilimanjaro as a women empowerment. So many different various background people that come together. That was something very interesting for me for choosing Cambridge.
I see. And on this particular bit, on zero downing on some schools or shortlisting some schools, I guess somebody told me this a couple of years ago, saying, he said that go to a school which matches your vibe. For instance, IESC has a goal of creating responsible business leaders. I want to be a responsible business leader, and I came to know about this after talking to current students or alumni from IESC, and that's when I decided that IESC is the school that I want to go to. So an advice to the audience is, go to the school which matches your vibe. And how to understand what the vibe of the school is, talking to students would help you understand what the vibe is, right? Coming on to the next question, which is about the essay writing process. We came across a really nice term that Prabhat told us in our discussions, SCARL. I don't know what this is. Maybe Prabhat, can you shed some light on how did you approach your essays and what this term is all about?
Sure. So basically, SCARL is nothing but S stands for situation, C is challenge, A is action, R is result, and L is learning. So when you combine these five, you can create a paragraph, which, like, just with 3-4 lines, you can tell your admissions committee that, like, this is something which I achieved, which I learned, and these are the actions which I took. So basically, it's a complete process in terms of making your admission, counselor understand that what your profile is about and what you have gained through it. So I applied the SCAL format for all of my essays, including my LORs. I tried to follow the same in my resume as well, but the learning side, it's a bit of a challenge. Maybe you can add it in your university listings and all, but majorly for the essays and LOR, SCAL format worked pretty well for me, because I had those kind of number of words in which I can express my overall situation, challenge, actions which I took, results with all the numbers, and learnings which I gained through all those experiences. So yeah. that it is. Thanks.
All right, that is such an interesting format to really structure your answers, I believe. Looking back,
Yeah.
I see that my answers were of this format, but I never knew that something like this existed. Right. So,
Yeah.
how about you, Harsh? How did you approach the essay writing process?
I think same as you, Nikhil. I knew that I have to write, or most of the Cambridge essay, in fact, they are formatted in a way that you have to write about learning, right?
Mhm.
So you do want to tell about the situation and what was the action at hand, and what did you do, and what was the result, and end of the day, what did you learn? Good, bad, even if failure, every success has a learning to it. So definitely and but I also did not know about the scar, but most of us have used the same format
Yeah.
because the context is mandatory. You could be dealing with 100 billion startup, right? And you could say I brought in 2% revenue. That's a huge chunk. Or you could be dealing with a 100,000 startup and say I brought in 20,000 percent revenue extra. So
Yeah.
context is important, and context comes from the situation what it was. I'm sorry, guys. There are a lot of mosquitoes here. All right. Sorry about that. But yeah, context is important, and you have to be in a situation. Always remember that when you're telling the story, it's an essay that's going to talk for you. You will get a chance to speak and explain what you wrote, but you need to get the chance first. And to do that, your essays need to talk. They need to show who you are as a person, and also the reader has to, once they're reading, it should be interesting enough for them to kind of time travel with you in that situation, understand everything. Okay, this was a situation, this is what this guy did, he learned this, amazing, brilliant. I'm not saying
Perfect.
the learning has to be brilliant, but your learning
Yeah.
has to be there. So that's the format we all followed, I guess. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Rishika, did you follow similar approach? How was it for you?
Yeah, very, very similar approach. So I'm not going to repeat it because it was very similar, but just a piece of advice is be you. Don't do a stock standard answer, because the likelihood is that the people reading it are reading thousands of essays.
Yeah.
You don't need to pretend to be anyone else but you. And I think, Mikhail, you said this a bit early on, is, go to the school that is the right fit for you, that
Yeah.
speaks to you. And that's the same thing in the essay writing process, is be you, so that the right school also accepts you. And that when you get accepted, if and when you get accepted, you're going to be in a cohort that's like-minded to you. You don't want to pretend to be someone else, and then you
Right.
get there in September or whenever you start, and you don't actually fit in.
Perfect. Yeah.
So yeah, just be you in whatever you do. Do your learnings, but also add that little quirky or spark to your essay.
That makes sense. Absolutely. And guys, here comes an important point. Let's say for in your admission journey, essay writing, interviews, whatever. How important was networking for you guys? Did you guys network a lot before writing your essays or starting your journey? How was it? How was it for you, Prabhat?
So yeah, like I networked with a lot of people. I guess firstly, I networked with the folks who are actually working in Europe, just to gauge how the European startup industry, or the overall job scenario is. Secondly, I networked with a couple of my undergrad network, who are actually alumni of, let's say, renowned colleges in Europe as well. So they are the alumni from Cambridge, HEC, Oxford, everywhere. So I talked to all of them. I followed like you know a typical format in which I always ask them the standard questions, standard 10 to 15 questions around the culture, the courses, the professors, and the overall admission process, or the placement scenario, or what is the average GMAT score which is required, right? So those sort of questions helps you a lot in terms of gauging what admission committee is actually looking for. Adcom has to look for something, right? For
Yeah.
every school, there has been a culture to it. As you said, it has to be a right fit for you. So it has those nuances. You have to just pick those nuances. It can be club association, it can be courses, professors, it can be specializations, right? So networking helped me a lot in terms of understanding Europe as a market and as well as these universities to apply for. So yeah,
All
thanks.
right. Yeah. How about you, Harsh? Was networking an essential tool for you?
Definitely. Network, guys. It doesn't go beyond this, right? Because when you are in an international school, or sorry, when you are in a school as an international student at that school, you're gonna get a job based on networking. So it's gonna help you to pave that path first of all, and more you network, more you get used to it, and more you get used to talk to people who don't know you. You're talking first time, right? So
Yeah.
networking is must. What I did was slightly different than what Prabhat did. I did not go ask about average GMAT score or placement stats because, I mean, those are there on the website. You can do that if
Yeah.
people know
Yeah.
you, right? It's a
Yeah.
reality. The employment report or GMAT average stats that you see on the website, those are not the one you should be, or those are not the one sometimes in the reality. So if you know
Yeah.
somebody like Prabhat did before, right, going to them, you can definitely have a friendly chat and ask them what's the reality. What I did not know anyone from any of these famous schools. So I had an interesting approach. I used to go and ask them, if I'm talking to an alumni who was passed out, what do you miss the most about the school?
Hmm.
That was my first
Wow.
question, right? And if it is current student, I used to ask, what are you going to miss the most about the school? All right. So
Yeah.
that's one question and never has failed me so far. People go so candid about the school, about their experiences, and it goes on and on and on. And after that, and from there, you can pick and your questions, and definitely,
Absolutely.
there are so many things that are not on the website. You can talk about the clubs. You can also talk about that you have these specific goals or post career or post MBA goals. What can I use in the school, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, the networking was two part. One, to understand the school and the culture, as Rishika was mentioning before. It's better to get rejected than accepted in the wrong school because you're
Yeah.
gonna feel left out if the cohort is not what you feel it is. So
Yeah.
one was to understand what kind of people are going to the school, what do they think about the world, and the second was, so this was for me personally. When I was networking with people, I wanted to understand what people actually think, and that's for my personal uh, knowledge gathering about the school. And the second piece of it was definitely uh, definitely asking them questions that you have to really mine answers. You have to excavate and get it, and then use them into your interview process or your essay writing process. Those pinpointed things that are very specific to the school and school's culture.
Yeah.
That shows that you know how to network to the outcome, and that also shows that yes, you will be able to network and get your job through the networking if school is not able to do that, right? So for me, networking was two part. One, to understand if I fit. Second, to get answers that I can actually use into the essays or interview process. And sometimes it used to happen. Some people are really nice. If you build a rapport, they are willing to
Yeah.
send an email on your behalf to the AdCom. They're current student or
Yeah.
alumni, and it doesn't hurt if you have 2 or 3 networking session with the one person, they like you can politely request that would they mind
Yeah.
sending a kind of reference
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
letter of recommendation outside of your official recommendation. So that
Yeah.
works. I've seen it
That
work
works.
in many
Yeah.
cases. Yeah.
All right. And Rishika, was networking an important tool for you as well?
Yeah, it was a bit more of an informal tool. So I have a friend who's currently at Oxford, and it was really nice to to speak to her on her experience of the school, to understand the culture. I also reached out to someone else who was from South Africa and who's an alumni of Said Business School. She also did her MBA, and I got her to, I did multiple sessions with her actually. So I wanted to understand the actual structure of the program, and not just what was given on the website, but sort of deep diving into specific things. There's so many
Yeah.
electives, and I think this goes for a lot of the schools. There's so many electives as well. And there's stuff like strategy and innovation, which is pretty straightforward when you read it and you read the description. But sometimes you only get specific insights on how was the lecturer, how was sort of the experience of it outside of, the actual core curriculum. You only get that from sort of the past students who've been there. So I used quite a few sessions with with an alumni, and I also got her to vet some of my essays from an objective perspective, because she's been through the whole admissions process, because she's already done her MBA, but I'm also not that close to her where she has to feel sort of that she can't tell me the truth on my my essays. So I also got her to vet my essays. And I think also I wouldn't say really networking, but really talking to the recruitment guys of the respective schools. You also get to understand, I got to understand Oxford's culture through them, because they were just great. And it was, I could tell that they weren't just selling me like Oxford. They were just they were really emphasizing fit, and that was really, really nice.
Wow, absolutely. And you know what? One thing that I can owe my admit for IESE to is networking. I mean, I did network and networked a lot with students from IESE, and probably that's the reason I was able to get there. And since we're talking about networking, I guess one of the easiest ways today to network is to go to Mentoroni, select a mentor, and talk to them. They are there to help you on your admissions, MBA admissions, MS admissions, GMAT, GRE strategy, career counseling, resume writing, and anything that you can think of in the admission journey. What the mentors at Mentoroni are asking for is the donation to any NGO or to the fundraiser that Mentoroni supports of any amount that you like. That is going to go to the COVID patients in India. So we are raising funds for the patients in India, because probably you all already know that we are lacking oxygen, PPE kits, medicines in India, and hence we are raising those funds. So it's a great opportunity for not just to network with, or not just to talk to people from your target schools, but also to support a very noble cause. So I will encourage you to go to mentoroni.com and book your sessions with them with the target mentors from target schools. So moving on to that, I would like to know your interview experience here. How did you prepare for your interview, and how was the interview experience like? So I will start with you, Harsh, on this.
Yes. So first of all, guys, when you get the interview invite, there is half the journey still pending. so I would advise, when you apply and you get an interview invite, yes, enjoy, open up a champagne bottle and do what you do, but don't just go haywire, and so come back and work on that. So what I did, for me, interview process, GMAT club, hands-on debriefing interviews, the debriefing experience that people had written, points and quants. So these were the two sources for me. And then we also have a couple of blogs. Can't remember the name exactly, but then again, for me, a very important thing was to understand about the interviews, is whether it's going to be a blind interview or whether interviewer has read my essays and my application, right? And the approach is, as you said, it's pretty different for both. For me, Cambridge, I interviewed at 4 schools, and then for me the format was, at some schools it was predefined format. There's a set of 50 questions that you have. Tell me about a time you did a leadership experience or a failure. What do you learn about that? So those tick box questions. But when it came to Cambridge, I actually was lucky enough to find 2 of the students, our current graduate student, and I spoke to them. My interview was same as theirs, and they told me it's going to be one of the best experience in your entire MBA journey, right? And I was not able to comprehend that how is it going to be a best experience in the journey when I have to actually appear for an interview. So that scares all of us. But my interview was very well. There was no predefined questions. Okay, I only had I had a startup idea in my mind. What I was told in the interview by my interviewer, that he read my essays and he can see the same person writing all the essays. So I was consistent, and he said, I kind of think that I know the person before I'm even talking to you. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for not taking the as Rishika was saying, copy paste route. Okay. And then the interview was very well. It was strictly around how my interview was trying to probe me into a business plan for my supposed startup. And we discussed about funding. They discussed about what are the kind of problems I am thinking right now will be there. How am I going to run through this situation? So very good interview experience, at least through Cambridge. And I heard most of the time it's like that. There are no predefined questions. It's just a discussion, and you just have to show your personality. You've written your essays, you've done your resumes, a letter of recommendation. The writing part is over. Now it's time to tell them who you really are in reality, and be yourself. As Rishika and Prabhat both were saying before, be yourself, because you want to be in a school that like you, and of course the school you like, and be ready with your follow-up questions in the interview. You always have to go ask questions. Yeah.
And Rishika, how was it for you? How did you prepare? How was the experience for Oxford's interview?
Yeah, so I use GMAT Club as my primary resource because the debriefs there are amazing. You get years and years of debriefs, and you can kind of see the theme that particular schools have. I didn't know who my interviewer was going to be, but from sort of GMAT Club, I thought it was going to be someone from the admissions committee. I was wrong. So I got into the interview, and they have something called a stress interview. So that's basically where they push your buttons and to see how you would react in a stressful situation. And I got someone who was an industry expert in financial services. He had over sort of 20 years of experience, worked for Barclays Bank, and he's now working at Goldman Sachs. And he sort of does a fellowship now at Oxford. So he was very, very pedantic about my experience specifically. It wasn't generic, just, tell me your strengths, tell me your weaknesses. It was very specific. And to Harsh's point, if you are not yourself in your essays and you get someone like that in your interview, they will just see through you. They will know that you're not being yourself. So yeah, my interview was quite a roller coaster because he kept pushing my buttons. He asked me, okay, what do you want to do post MBA? And I told him what I wanted to do. And he's like, okay, what's your plan B? Told him my plan B. Then he was like, what's your plan C? And I hadn't thought of my plan C, right? And you then just got to be yourself. And also don't get be stern, but don't get annoyed sort of in your interview, just be you. Don't forget the follow-up questions, and I would advise that don't ask them anything that you can find on the website. Because that would mean or give them a message that you haven't actually vetted the school properly. So ask them questions relating to something that you can't find on the website.
Right. That makes sense. Absolutely. Also, a reminder to the audience, we'll be picking up the audience questions in the next 5 to 10 minutes. Feel free to enter all the comments, whatever doubts you have, you would want to ask our panelists. So Prabhat, if I'm not wrong, HEC has this alumni interview thing, probably 2 rounds of alumni interview, if I'm not wrong. So how was the experience there?
So overall, I had 2 interviews, as you said, with the HEC alumni. I took a different approach. Earlier I used to use GMAT Club for researching the school and researching the program, as well as GMAT overall structure and everything. But for interviews, I just went candid. I wanted to give it all my best because I knew why I wanted to do MBA, why now, why Europe, everything, right? What are my post-MBA plans, the short-term plans or the long-term plans. So I wanted to go very candid. And in HEC's interview, you have to have a presentation, you have to make a presentation and then present it to the interviewer. So again, I took a risky move. I'm a photographer, so I built a presentation on photography with my own photos. So yeah, so interviewers liked it, and one of them was actually a photographer. So I got lucky as well.
Wow.
So basically, in terms of interview, for me, if it is very, very candid, in that case, you would be able to connect with your interviewer, and that's what they are looking for. If you would be able to connect to the people or the cohort you will be meeting at the campus, respective campus you are going to, it would be much easier for you to make a connections there. So if you can connect with your interviewer, you would be able to connect with your cohort. And
Perfect.
that's what I did. Like went candid, went with a photography presentation, and at the same time, like we were having pretty much chit chat about like our own lives as well. Like he was telling me like how he chose HEC. So those were my follow up questions. Like how did you choose HEC, and like is there any anecdote, as Harsh was telling earlier, like what you missed most, like while you were
Yeah,
leaving HEC. So that was the actual question to the interviewer, one of the interviewers I asked. So yeah, this
I
was the
see.
overall experience with
For
HEC. Yeah.
great. My 2 cents on interview preparation, or I would be just to include personal stories in the interview. The school has already seen your professional side of the things from your resume, from your application, from your LinkedIn profile, and whatnot. This is the time where you need to connect with the school very personally. And if you are connecting with them personally, I guess you're winning, or let's say your chances of getting into the school are getting higher and higher. And if it's diverting into the professional side of the things, probably it's not going in the right direction. So my suggestion to everybody: include as much personal stories as you can in your interview. All
Yeah.
right. Few last questions. One is the language thing. Coming to European schools, people have this perception of that they'll have to learn a local language. Is that the case with your schools as well? At IESC, the school will not ask you to learn, or will not force you to learn any local language. They would help you for sure, but it's about the post MBA thing. In the job, you might need to have a local language. How's it with you guys? Rishika, is at Oxford, is local language a must? How is it?
It's not a must. So because Oxford is in the UK, you would just
Yeah.
predominantly do English. But knowing another language or knowing other languages helps with the CV and what you put in your CV, but it's not a must.
All right. And how about you, Prabhat, at HEC?
So yeah, like HEC is an international MBA program. So overall, there's no language requirement in HEC as such. But again, like if you want to explore France or let's say Europe, if you have that control over the additional European language, it's definitely gonna help you, right? And again, in terms of job scenario, I think if you're targeting non-English speaking jobs, let's say if you're studied from HEC Paris, you're looking to stay in Paris, work in Paris, right?
Mhm.
So in that case, like there is a minimum requirement level, like the B1 level or the B2 level for French in to work in France. So yeah, that's
Right.
how it is.
All right. And for you, Hirsch?
For me, like Rishika was saying, I think UK you don't have to worry. I think Oxford also does the English language test. I'm not sure Rishika about that, but Cambridge does the English language test. So you need to know English. Even though you have done GMAT pretty well, you have to go through English language test for Cambridge at least. That's
Right.
3 hours of test.
All right.
Language in EU schools important. You know the local language. You guys probably, if you're going to AC or HEC, you have 16, 15 months, and it's not a very difficult language to learn. So my advice would be, if you're targeting those schools, maybe after your GMAT, once you've written your essays, go for it now. Go learn a new language. Go learn Spanish if you're planning to go to ESC, because
All right.
school will not ask for it, as Nikhil was
Hmm.
mentioning. This is all English curriculum. But once you
Yeah.
get into the job market, Nikhil is working in Netherlands already. I'm in Italy. I was in France. I know the language is going to play an important role in your social life as well, apart from your
Yeah.
professional
Yeah.
life. You're going to have a
Yeah.
lot more opportunities if you know the language. So why not go learn a new language if Europe is on the
Absolutely.
tag? Not necessarily increase your chances. Probability game.
Yeah. Absolutely. Last topic of discussion: the resume. Uh, how did you go about tackling your resume for MBA? I would like to start with you, Rishika.
Yeah, so Oxford has a template that you can use. So I use that as my foundation. But similar to what I did with my essays and stuff, I tailored to make it more me. So similar to the essays, I didn't just write everything down on one piece of paper and send through, something that was just black and white. I think Prabhat mentioned that he used like photography and some stuff to do his presentation, and I did the same thing for my essays and resume. You don't need to make your resume very colorful, But I used the Oxford template and then just tweaked it and gave it a bit of a spark to make it more me.
Perfect. And for you, Prabhat, how did the resume bit was solved? Did you use the Scarl for resume as well?
So I used Scala format. I tried to use it, but again, learning bit was pretty much omitted because of the limit on words. But one thing I think which I added from my side is the hyperlinks. So at the top of my resume, I added my YouTube channel's hyperlink, my Flickr account, which showcases my photography, and then my LinkedIn profile, right? So those hyperlinks, can show your profile just with a less amount of space. And then again, the typical format, you choose your words carefully, and again, no resume is perfect. You have to do multiple iterations already, right? So over the past 5 years, I think I have done around hundreds of iterations already. So that will actually help you in terms of get those right keywords, because at the end you want to showcase different skill set in each bullet point, like whatever work experience or education points I've added, each bullet is showcasing different skill set for me. And at the same time, I've not used too many jargons, so that anyone reading is not able to understand it. So overall, those were the key points in my mind. Rest, same template. Yeah.
Perfect. I would like to add something here, like two pieces of advice here. First, show the impact, quantify your impact. For instance, improved the conversion rate by 10%. That, and in each bullet point, try to show a different skill of your, let's say, led a team of 10 members, shows your leadership skill. Improve the conversion rate by 30%, shows your initiative taking ability, maybe. So quantify things, show your impact, show the impact that you have created, try to show different skills of you, as Prabhat said. So let's move on to this, the audience question, and we'll do this in a rapid fire manner. We'll keep it quick and precise. So very first question is, I see a lot of questions coming in from for GMAT. Like, I'm stuck in verbal for GMAT. I'm stuck in GMAT at 650, right? 3 questions on GMAT I could see. So what would be your advice on improving on GMAT? Harsh, how about you? You mentioned something in the beginning. Any quick advice on how can somebody improve if somebody's stuck at 650, let's say?
I think, guys, you need to, for me, I think what you need to do is you need to find out where you're lacking. Right? Are you lacking in the speed? Are you making silly mistakes, or is there a conceptual problem? Right? GMAT is a time bound, GRE both. This time bound test you're sitting is matters a lot. So a couple of things that you can try probably is see if you're making silly mistakes, and that's happening because you're not able to concentrate for longer, and it happens 6 years, 7 years after you're out of your undergrad school. This happens. So try to increase your span by sitting for a longer period of time. Maintain an error log. GMAT Club does that for you. If you're using that, GMAT Club does that for you. You can see what are the areas that you're lacking. And then there are a couple of platforms like eGMAT has Coloranium, I think, and there you can go and you attempt few questions, and that tells you what are the areas you need improvement on. So it depends on where you're lacking, actually.
Perfect. Also, we have a session on GMAT strategy tomorrow at 7 p.m. You can go to mentoroni.com. In there, you can register yourself for the session. All these topics we will be discussing in the session on how to improve from 650, how to improve on your verbal. We have a 760 scorer taking that particular session, and you can ask all these questions there as well, and we are going to discuss that in detail. The very next question I see is related to the language, the native language in. If that is mandatory in EU, we already discussed on that. If you have further questions, Sayan, on this, feel free to block a session on Mentoroni with any of the mentors. You can have a further discussion on this. I see some profile evaluation request as well. Go to GMAT Club, put in your profile in the profile evaluation section. We'll drop in the comment for the profile evaluation section in here, and then you can go and drop in your profiles to get yourself evaluated, or talk to the mentors from Mentoroni on this. Now let's see another question, which is about here. when to approach networking? Do you have a strategy in your mind? Do you cold call? What is the approach that you guys took for networking? Prabhat, you want to take this?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So again, cold calling, it's never gonna work for sure. And overall, use LinkedIn as a platform. I must say, it doesn't matter like if you're actually speaking to someone, having a networking session or a call session with them, just go through their LinkedIn profile. I mean, like just multiple LinkedIn profile sticking to your industry, or let's say your specific function, or let's say a particular school you wanna go. Just look out the alumni's profile, or let's say the people who are working in your industry. So with that kind of a profile, LinkedIn profile only, you would understand like what it takes to get into that particular school, right?
Yeah,
Apart from that, again, like try to look for the alumni from your undergrad, or any particular network you have in Europe. If you don't have it, it's fine. Like overall, just don't try to cold call. Try to like contribute to their time, like because overall you're asking someone over LinkedIn or at any platform about their time to contribute to your profile or give you some suggestion to you, right? So just
yeah,
have a research to their profile as well, and try to like justify their time, because overall like if you can contribute with their like by endorsing them for their skills mentioned in LinkedIn, that would be a good approach to actually connect with them. Or let's say if you are connected with them on LinkedIn, you are liking their posts or like commenting on them. That's how you connect with people actually, right? And
yeah,
post that, like you can just reach out to them and they will reply to you. So instead of like randomly seeking suggestions from anyone, try to engage with those people, and
yeah,
then you can have a better conversion over LinkedIn. Yeah.
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 Also, I feel platform like Mentroni comes into picture in here. uh, that's what it is made for. Network with people from your target schools, and you don't have to really waste time in searching for people and then waiting for their replies. Go to the platform, search for your for your target school. You will get so many mentors over there. Just block their time right away, right? Harsh, do you want to add to it?
No, I was just saying. I think that always a question, cold calling. So one thing that you have to keep in mind: everybody is very much willing to help. I reached out to I don't know how many people. Everybody responded. Probably they said, ask your questions in the messages, and I'll reply via email,
Yeah,
or let's set up a call. But everyone responded. So don't be too scared of calling, not calling, sending messages on LinkedIn to
messages.
people. They will definitely respond. You're a prospective student, and there is an affinity towards school and the people who are going to come to the school.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
don't be very afraid of sending out messages, emails, personalized
perfect,
invite with a message that why you want to connect with them, because you want their time to understand about the school. So it works.
perfect,
Yeah.
perfect. All right. So the next question that we have is people who are coming from entrepreneurship background. Strong points for entrepreneur profile with one example. I would also like to add, but before that, I would want to ask our panelists. So Prabhat, you come from an entrepreneurial background, I believe. So would you want to specify the strong points that you could mention because you're coming from such a background?
So again, like entrepreneurship gives you a sense of empathy and building strong relationships. So right, again, like in terms of your MBA application, if you are maintaining a coherent story, and like you actually believe in empathy and building long-lasting relationships, I think that would work well. And especially during my entrepreneurial journey, like when I had my own startup running up and running in India, um, you gain that sense of leadership, right? That leading your team, helping them out, making charter for them, and like overall empowering them with all the thought process and the decision making, right? So at the end, entrepreneurship helps you become a future leader, and that future leader you will only become if you have certain empathy with your like co-workers or your employees, right? So in that case, it can help you. So that's one of the examples. Yeah.
All right, all right. Another thing I believe, first of all, B schools love entrepreneurs. That's what I have seen. Because being an entrepreneur, you get to touch, as Prabhat mentioned, so many different areas, right? Um, you can project yourself as a hustler when you are an entrepreneur, because when you're starting a company from scratch, I'm sure you would face so many problems. There will be days when you'll be like, oh God, I cannot sustain this particular business model, and we are done with this product. And the very next moment, you're like, oh, we can keep on going because you got a solution to a problem. So include those stories, those amazing stories where you would have failed and got so many different learnings from that failure, and then you would have picked yourself up from there, and then show yourself as a hustler. And every B school loves a hustler, and the reason being, if at all the B school is not able to provide you a job, let's say, they know that you being a hustler you will be able to manage to get a job. And if you can do that, the B school is going to love you, right? So project yourself as a hustler, I guess. If you wanted to see an example, this is the example that I can give you. Find a story from your entrepreneurial journey where you failed, you picked up yourself, and then you started again, right? uh, all right, so another question for you, Rishika and Harsh. What's the average score for GMAT for UKB schools?
I think it's around the 680 mark, plus minus there. But what I want to say to that is, so each school kind of has its average GMAT score published on the website, but you also need to look at what region you're from.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, guys from India, China, because it's so competitive, the average required is probably going to be so much more than the 680 mark.
Yeah.
And if you're from Africa, it's actually it's the opposite. Because there are not many African candidates applying, the average score required would be a bit lower than 680. That's not to say that if you're getting over 680, you're going to definitely get in. And I think that's what I want to emphasize about European business schools, is that they look at the overall application. And I think you'll find that being said all over GMAT Club. It's not just about your score. Your score is one aspect, but stuff like your experience and what you uniquely bring to the table is weighted. I wouldn't say as much, but it has a very heavy weighting when doing your application process.
Right. On the similar lines, we have this question on what is the ratio for your GMAT score to academic to your work profile? Is GMAT score weighted higher? I would like to quickly answer this. See, the thing is, you have to perform well in every bucket, be it academics, your work experience, your leadership qualities, and whatnot, right? So academic is one bucket out of it. How can you excel in that particular bucket? There are two ways to do that. Show that you scored really well in your undergrad degree. If you cannot show that, score really well in your GMAT GRE score. So you have to tell the schools that you can perform well academically in the school as well, right? That's about it. That's the importance to the test. It is very important. You have to perform well academically, and you have to prove that. All right. So there's another question, a really interesting one. I'm an architect student. Do business school encourage students from art backgrounds? Anybody who would want to pick this up?
Poets and quants. Poets and quants.
Yeah.
You are the poet, so definitely yes. I mean that whole platform and the world famous is built on that, right? So there are quant side of people, they are engineers, and then there are poet side of people who are coming from art background. So there is not at all any problem for you, any hindrance for you to go and apply to your dream schools. Nothing from whatever educational background you have.
Perfect.
Yeah, I would like to add to that. I think the more unique you are, and the more you're actually outside of the business sort of sphere, the more attractive you are. That's not to say that if you're from a business sphere like me, I'm from consulting, that you're not attractive. But I would encourage anyone from an arts background. I think there was one on manufacturing, architecture. MBAs love that because they want that diversity. And leadership and strategy can be seen in so many different spheres. It's not just in the business world. So I would encourage anyone.
Absolutely. Yeah. In my current incoming batch as well at IESE, there are so many people coming from art backgrounds, and I rather see that schools loving, as Rishika mentioned, loving people who are coming from such a diverse background. Absolutely. Another question, and I need Prabhat, you to answer this because you have some inputs from how to manage the finances for MBA education. The question is it true that EU schools are not that generous with scholarships? That's one bit of it, but I would also want to touch upon how to really manage the finances in here. From IESE point of view, IESE is really generous in giving scholarships. I mean, of course, you need to deserve that, but there is nothing like that. That at least for IESE point of view, that they don't give scholarship. They give a lot of scholarships. You need to be worthy of that. Prabhat, how about you? How's the scholarship scene at HEC?
So again, yeah, like it's true that like there are multiple scholarships from your school, from outside third parties, right? Maybe you are taking loan from, let's say, Prodigy Finance, and Prodigy also offers you scholarships. So there are ample scholarship opportunities out there. It's just that like if you are actually in the dire need of it, you will get one, or it will be a merit base that you have an exceptional profile, and like you are then opting for the scholarship, and you're getting certain excellence scholarship for you. So those are the two kinds of scholarship which you'll get. So but again, like given that fact, there are ample opportunities. Let's say if your father is in a bank, and like banks also provide certain scholarships, so you can have scholarships from your personal reference as well, and you can have scholarship merit based or need based. So yeah.
Perfect. All right. In the interest of time, last question: how to reach you all? I'll take this one. The best way to reach to all of us and so many other mentors from top schools is to go to mentoroni.com. It's a platform that is raising funds for COVID situation in India. All the donations that you can make donation to any NGO of your choice, or to the fundraiser that we are supporting, of any amount that you want. You can go to the Mentoroni, pick people from your target schools and block their calendar right away. This way, you don't just network with the people from your target schools, but also help in the noble cause. Feel free to go to Mentoroni. We have a GMAT session coming up tomorrow at 7 p.m. IST. Feel free to sign up for that. That's about it. Thank you so much, guys, for joining. It has been a wonderful session, really informative, and all the best, very best for your journeys to respective schools. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thanks a
Nikhil. Bye
lot,
bye all.
everyone. Thanks, Nikhil.
Bye.
Bye bye.